One thing all Pokemon fans can agree on is that Kanto is home to some of the coolest and most nostalgic Pokemon in the series. From their near perfect starters to their top tier design legendaries, every Pokemon from Kanto has something special about them. Although Generation 1 is not my favorite generation of Pokemon, I still hold this generation to high praise due to the fact this is where Pokemon started, and let's be honest, every single Pokemon from Kanto are designed perfectly. With all Pokemon lovers having a soft spot for Generation 1 and me having a soft spot for competitive Pokemon, I've decided to find out the best competitive Pokemon from Generation 1. As a disclaimer, we're only talking about competitive Pokemon. This means we're only talking about Doubles VGC, which is the main competitive format for Pokemon. This list will feature 7 Pokemon with 3 honorable mentions, and to be honest, this list was way harder to make than I ever would have thought. There are just so many strong and good Pokemon from Generation 1, which is why I have a weird feeling someone is going to flame me in the comments for not having a certain Pokemon on this list. Kicking us off at number 7 is one of, if not the coolest ghost type of all time, Gengar. Now throughout competitive, Gengar has seen 3 different forms: its normal form, which we all know and love, its Mega Evolution, and its Gigantamax form. Gengar is a ghost and poison type Pokemon, allowing it to be super effective up against fairy type Pokemon, which is the best typing in competitive. When you take a look at Gengar's stats, it's clear to see that this Pokemon is made for offense, and that's it. Its special attack and speed stats are amazing, sitting at base 130 and base 110. To compensate for these 2 amazing stats, Gengar's HP and defensive stats are terrible, flat out terrible. Gengar has access to a great move pool, being able to learn strong offensive moves such as Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, Thunderbolt, and Dazzling Gleam. It can also be a menace on the supporting side, with moves such as Icy Wind, Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, and Thunder Wave. Originally, Gengar had the Levitate ability, which was actually really good for this Pokemon, considering it got rid of its ground weakness. But down the road, Game Freak decided to nerf Gengar, getting rid of its Levitate ability and switching it out with Cursed Body. When it comes to Mega Gengar, this Pokemon is just a flat out better version of Gengar. Its stats take a nice jump, becoming stronger, faster, and a tad bit bulkier. When Gengar Mega evolves, its ability changes to Shadow Tag, which is actually a top tier ability, making opposing Pokemon not able to switch out. In a tournament setting, Gengar is almost always holding the Focus Sash item, as it allows this frail Pokemon to take at least one hit. We've also seen Gengar run items such as the Choice Scarf and the Choice Specs, but to be honest, that's more of a rare sight to see. Gengar and Mega Gengar have always seen decent usage in the competitive scene, racking up 12 regional level tournament wins and most importantly, 1 World Championship in 2016. Overall, Gengar is one of the best offensive ghost types in Pokemon, and to be honest, if I left this Pokemon off the list, it would probably haunt me. Coming in at number 6 is an all-time favorite of mine, Gary the Gyarados. Now Gyarados is a water and flying type Pokemon, which is actually great defensively. It's only weak to electric and rock, while it resists bug, fighting, steel, water, and fire. On top of that, Gyarados has an immunity to ground moves due to its flying typing. Gyarados' stats are solid all around. It has solid bulk, decent speed, but where Gyarados really shines is its base 125 attack stat. With an attack stat this high, we've seen Gyarados destroy teams with powerful offensive moves such as Waterfall, Ice Fang, Earthquake, and even Bounce. If Gyarados wasn't already strong enough, it has access to one of the best setup moves in all of Pokemon, Dragon Dance. This move will raise the user's attack and speed stat 1 stage, and we've seen players use this move to make Gyarados super strong and pretty much sweep games. Another thing that makes Gyarados such a threat is its 2 abilities, Intimidate and Moxie. Intimidate lowers the attack stat of opposing Pokemon whenever Gyarados hits the field, while Moxie will boost Gyarados' attack stat every time it picks up a KO. But Intimidate is usually the go-to ability just because of how strong it is. Just like our first Pokemon on this list, Gengar, Gyarados also has access to a Mega Evolution. Not only does Mega Gyarados have a super dope design, its stats increase significantly and it gets rid of its flying typing for dark typing. As much as Mega Gyarados was weaker compared to the other Mega Evolutions, this Pokemon still ended up winning Worlds in 2014, so shout out to my boy Gyarados. Other than winning Worlds, Gyarados has just overall been a very consistent Pokemon. We've seen it in the early stages of competitive, being a bulky attacker holding items such as the Life Orb, Assault Vest, or Lumberry, and now in the present day we're starting to see Gyarados become a support Pokemon holding items such as Rocky Helmet, Safety Goggles, and Citrus Berry. With Gyarados having great abilities, great stats, and access to an amazing move pool, I don't think we will ever see a time where this Pokemon is not good. The number 5 Pokemon on this list goes out to the best legendary bird in Kanto, Zapdos. It's worth mentioning that Zapdos has 2 forms. Obviously, there's normal Zapdos, then there's Galarian Zapdos, which is Zapdos' regional form from Generation 8. In this video, we're only going to be talking about the OG Zapdos, as Galarian Zapdos has really done nothing competitively. Zapdos is a flying and electric type Pokemon, which is actually really good. It's only weak to 2 typings, Ice and Rock, which actually makes it hard to hit for big damage. With these stats and access to great supporting and offensive moves, Zapdos easily becomes one of the most versatile Pokemon on this list. Throughout competitive, we've seen Zapdos be a speed control Pokemon with Tailwind. We've also seen it as a tanky support Pokemon with Roost and items such as the Citrus Berry, Leftovers, or Rocky Helmet. And lastly, we've seen this Pokemon as a huge offensive threat, holding items such as the Life Orb or Choice Specs while running moves such as Hurricane, Thunderbolt, and Thunder. Another thing I love about Zapdos is it's even better in the rain, as it supports rain Pokemon really well. It can also fully utilize its 2 strongest moves, Hurricane and Thunder, as in the rain, these moves never miss. Although Zapdos has great stats, typing, and moves, its abilities are more of a weaker point. For the most part, Zapdos runs static as its ability, which makes the opponent have a 30% chance at being paralyzed when they hit Zapdos with a contact move. Now this ability isn't game breaking, but to be honest, every now and then static will come up with a clutch paralyze. Now unlike the 2 previous Pokemon we talked about on this list, Zapdos has never won a world championship. It's kinda weird to say that considering just how strong this Pokemon is. Nonetheless, I still feel as this Pokemon deserves a spot on this list due to its longevity in competitive. The next Pokemon on this list has a special place in my heart. It was my first starter I have ever chosen. At the number 4 slot, we got the grass starter of Kanto, Venusaur. Similar to Gengar on this list, Venusaur has 3 forms, its normal form, its Mega Evolution, and its Gigantamax form. On the other hand, unlike Gengar, all 3 of these forms were great and competitive. Venusaur is a grass and poison type Pokemon, and it has an amazing hidden ability, Chlorophyll. This ability doubles Venusaur's speed whenever it's in the sun. For this reason, we almost always see Venusaur paired up with a Sunsetter, such as Groudon, Torkoal, or even Ninetales. Not only does Venusaur outspeed almost every Pokemon in the sun, it can also put opposing Pokemon to sleep with the move Sleep Powder. This by far is Venusaur's strongest move, as you can really control the battle, putting Pokemon to sleep left and right. Venusaur also has great offensive moves, most notably Giga Drain, Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb, and Earth Power to do respectable damage up against fire types. In Generation 6, we've seen Venusaur get a Mega Evolution, which actually plays differently than regular Venusaur. Mega Venusaur gets a huge upgrade in stats, and it trades in its Chlorophyll ability for Thick Fat. Thick Fat halves the damage of fire and ice type moves. This ultimately gets rid of 2 of Venusaur's weaknesses. The combination of stat boost and a brand new ability makes Mega Venusaur play more as a bulky stall Pokemon rather than a speedy sleep control Pokemon like regular Venusaur. For the most part, Mega Venusaur will run moves such as Leech Seed and Giga Drain to give it a constant stream of HP recovery, making this Pokemon elite in the late game. Later on in Generation 8, Venusaur got a Gigantamax form, which was arguably the best Gigantamax form in the game. Gigantamax Venusaur had a signature move called G-Max Fine Lash. This move not only did big damage to your opponent, but it set up a passive effect doing 1/6 of both your opponent's HP for the next 4 turns. With this move, the Chlorophyll ability, and the HP boost Venusaur got from Gigantamaxing, Venusaur was able to be an offensive sweeper or a speedy Sleep Powder user, which is why it dominated Sword and Shield. Although Venusaur has never won a world title, I had to put this Pokemon on my list, not just for the nostalgia factor, but because of the sheer power and ability to take over a match in many competitive generations. We are down to our final 3 Pokemon on this list, and like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this list wasn't easy to make. I went back and forth trying to decide which Pokemon deserve a spot on this list, so before we hop into our top 3, let's go over a few honorable mentions. Starting off with Raichu. Now Raichu has always been a niche support Pokemon. This is due large part to its stats being lackluster while having a great ability and great supporting move pool. For the most part, Raichu is put on teams to be very annoying and control the pace of battle. With moves such as Fake Out and Nuzzle, Raichu can flinch Pokemon on its first turn in battle. On top of that, it can pretty much paralyze everything in sight, and to be honest, we all know how that feels. Now where Raichu is best is on rain teams. This is due to its Lightning Rod ability. This ability redirects all single target electric moves into Raichu, and instead of doing damage, it grants Raichu a +1 boost in special attack. Obviously, electric is a huge weakness to any rain team, but with Raichu and the Lightning Rod ability, you can say see you later to that electric weakness. It's worth mentioning Raichu did win a Pokemon World Championship back in 2016. On this team, we've seen Raichu pair up with Primal Kyogre, being that perfect support Pokemon this team needed. Overall, Raichu will never take over a game itself, but with how good of a support Pokemon Raichu is, and the fact it won a Pokemon World Championship, I felt like we had to mention it in this video. Our next honorable mention is Kangaskhan, more specifically Mega Kangaskhan. When it comes to Mega Evolutions, Mega Kangaskhan is by far the best one. With insane stats and being normal type, this Pokemon only has one weakness, making it broken offensively and defensively. Although its stats and typing are really good, its best feature by far is its ability, Parental Bond. Parental Bond makes Mega Kangaskhan hit an additional time at 50% of the original move. Not only is the damage boost great, this ability pairs up perfectly with the move Power Up Punch. Power Up Punch is a base 40 fighting move that boosts your attack one stage every time it's used. With Parental Bond, this move hits twice, doing big time damage and giving Mega Kangaskhan a +2 boost in attack. This combo quickly got out of hand, making Mega Kangaskhan the best Pokemon in almost every format it was legal in. During Mega Kangaskhan's time in competitive, we've seen this Pokemon win 1 World Championship. On top of that, it won 19 tournaments at the regional level. Most of the Mega Kangaskhan's in competitive ran a similar moveset, which consisted of Power Up Punch, Return, Fake Out, and Sucker Punch. This was pretty much a perfect moveset, as you had ways to flinch, do big damage, and outspeed with priority moves. In Generation 6, Mega Kangaskhan was so broken that when Pokemon transitioned to Generation 7, they nerfed Parental Bond, Sucker Punch, and made Mega Kangaskhan no longer able to learn the move Power Up Punch. I figured I'd get a lot of hate for leaving Mega Kangaskhan off this list, but due to its base form doing absolutely nothing in competitive and Mega Kangaskhan only being around for 2 generations, I feel as leaving this Pokemon as an honorable mention is justified. The last honorable mention goes out to the only Dragon type in all of Kanto, Dragonite. Let's be honest here, Dragonite has never really been that good in competitive, but ever since Generation 9, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Dragonite has been an elite option. Being a Dragon and Flying type Pokemon has its ups and downs. It's weak to 4 different types, but it does resist 5, 6 if you're counting its immunity to ground. Dragonite's stats are incredible, most notably its base 134 attack stat. This is important because Dragonite is mostly used as a heavy hitting physical attacker. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Dragonite is typically either holding the Life Orb or Choice Band as its item, and running moves such as Outrage, Low Kick, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and most importantly, Extreme Speed. Extreme Speed is the strongest priority in all of Pokemon, and with the addition to Terrestrialization, Dragonite is using the normal Terra to delete Pokemon with Extreme Speed. As if Extreme Speed wasn't strong enough, we are now seeing this move being boosted by Terrestrialization and items. One Pokemon really took Dragonite to another level. That Pokemon is Shenpao. Shenpao has a signature ability called Swords of Ruin, which lowers every Pokemon's defense on the field while Shenpao is out. This combo of Shenpao and normal Terra Dragonite quickly became the strongest team synergy in the whole game, making Dragonite one of the strongest Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Like I mentioned, before Generation 9, Dragonite hasn't really done anything competitively, but with its resurgence and pure dominance in Generation 9, I feel like it is definitely worth an honorable mention. It is time for our top 3 best competitive Pokemon from Kanto. Our number 3 slot is given to the sleepiest of Pokemon, Snorlax. Snorlax is a normal type Pokemon, and by far its strongest feature is its incredible bulk. Snorlax has one of the highest HP stats of all time, sitting at base 160. With a stat like this, Snorlax acts as a bulky Pokemon that stays on the field for a long time, either slowly doing damage or setting up and sweeping the game. In the early stages of competitive, Snorlax dominated, winning back-to-back World Championships in 2008 and 2009. After this, we really didn't see much of Snorlax in competitive, at least not until Generation 7, where they buffed 5 berries. These 5 berries were known as the Fiwam berries. Fiwam stands for Figgy, Ayapapa, Wiki, Aguav, and Mago berry. What this buff did was instead of healing 33% HP, these berries now healed 50% HP, which is an absurd amount. Obviously, any Pokemon can benefit from these berries, but Snorlax benefited the most. This was due to its hidden ability Gluttony and its access to the move Belly Drum. Belly Drum is a move that takes away 50% of the user's HP in exchange for maxing out its attack stat. And Gluttony is an ability that makes those Fiwam berries activate at 50% HP rather than their normal 25%. With these berries being buffed, Snorlax can use Belly Drum, max out its attack stat, then use the berry to go back up to full HP. This Snorlax build quickly got out of hand as we start to see players pair up Snorlax with a Fake Out or Follow Me user to set it up with ease. Snorlax also has access to the move Recycle, which grants Snorlax another berry. With Snorlax's natural bulk being so high, this Pokemon can just spam Recycle, constantly getting berries back to pretty much stay on the field forever. This surge of Snorlax in Generation 7 ultimately led it to win its 3rd World Championship in 2017. This puts Snorlax in an elite/rare group of Pokemon that have won 3 World Championships. Going into Generation 8, Game Freak realized they made a huge mistake and decided to nerf the Fiwam berries overall. This berry nerf ultimately nerfed Snorlax, and the glory days of this Pokemon was behind it. It's worth mentioning in Generation 8, Snorlax did receive a Gigantamax form, and to be honest, it was a total letdown. Snorlax's Gigantamax form seen little to no usage at all competitively, which is sad to say the least. I feel like everybody wanted Gigantamax Snorlax to be good, but it was just outclassed by the other Gigantamax Pokemon. Even though Snorlax dominated Generation 4 and Generation 7, winning 3 Pokemon World Championships, I feel as it was only good in just those 2 generations, keeping Snorlax out of the top 2. Our runner-up on this list goes out to the most used and most consistent Pokemon in Kanto, Arcanine. Arcanine is most known for being a bulky support Pokemon. This is due to its great base stats, typing, and great move pool. As you guys probably already know, Arcanine has access to one of the best abilities in competitive, Intimidate. To pair up with that top tier ability, Arcanine will usually run the moves Snarl and Will-O-Wisp. This allows Arcanine to completely control the opposing team's offense by lowering their physical and special attack stats. Other than just being on the field to lower attack stats, Arcanine can do respectable damage with its great move pool. The most used attacking moves Arcanine will tend to run would be Flare Blitz and Extreme Speed, but in certain situations, sometimes we'll see Arcanine run Play Rough or even Wild Charge. In Generation 8, Arcanine received a region variant in Hisuian Arcanine. This granted Arcanine an additional typing of Rock along with a slight stat boost. Now we have seen Hisuian Arcanine used in competitive in Scarlet and Violet, and to be honest, it's pretty decent. For the most part, this Pokemon will be holding the Choice Band as its item, and it would just be used as a tanky damage dealer. Now Hisuian Arcanine isn't bad, it's just regular Arcanine is so much better. Throughout competitive, base Arcanine has always been a top dog. No pun intended. Arcanine has a combined total of 35 tournament wins at the regional and international level. In almost all of these tournaments and competitive formats, Arcanine would be holding the berry as its item and running the moveset of Snarl, Will-O-Wisp, Protect, and Flare Blitz. I was so close to putting Arcanine in the number 1 slot, but there is this Pokemon named Incineroar. Incineroar does what Arcanine does, but just does it so much better. And for that reason, whenever Incineroar and Arcanine are both in the same format, Arcanine is just not used at all. I can easily see the argument that Arcanine should be number 1 on this list, but with Incineroar stealing its thunder, I decided to give it to another Pokemon. It is finally time to reveal the best competitive Pokemon from Generation 1. This one should be obvious. Chances are I put it on the thumbnail. The best competitive Pokemon from Kanto is Charizard. For starters, Charizard is one of the most beloved Pokemon of all time, which is why Game Freak decided to give it 4 forms. There's regular Charizard, Mega Charizard X, Mega Charizard Y, and Gigantamax Charizard. Surprisingly enough, Charizard in its base form was never really that good in competitive. Base Charizard has seen some usage across generations, but it really thrived in Generation 8 with Dynamax. Base Charizard's main problem are its stats. They're not that bad, but Charizard is a strong special attacker that is a bit too slow considering it's not that bulky. Like I mentioned, this Pokemon was really strong with Dynamax as it doubled its HP stat, making Charizard very bulky and able to output big damage with moves such as Max Flare and Max Airstream. Later on in the Sword and Shield days, they allowed Gigantamax Pokemon in the format. This took Charizard to a whole nother level. Earlier in this video, we talked about how Gigantamax Venusaur had a signature move called G-Max Fine Lash. Well, Charizard pretty much learns the exact same move, but it's a fire type move called G-Max Wildfire. For the most part, you would see Charizard pair up with a Sunsetter, and in the sun, Gigantamax Charizard was arguably the best Pokemon in the game. Charizard has an ability called Solar Power, which boosts Charizard's damage by 50% whenever it's in the sun. On top of that, if Gigantamax Charizard used G-Max Wildfire, it will get an additional 50% damage boost from the sunlight. It will also get another 50% boost due to it being a stab move. Let's not forget about Gigantamax Charizard's most used item, the Life Orb, which granted another 30% damage boost. By combining all these damage boosts, G-Max Wildfire in the sun pretty much just became a delete button, as almost no Pokemon could survive it. And even if you could survive this shot, the passive effect of G-Max Wildfire is now in effect, doing 1/6 of both your Pokemon's HP on the field for the next 4 turns. You could easily see why Gigantamax Charizard got out of hand, and to be honest, I don't think we'll ever see a Charizard form as strong as this one. Now let's talk about my personal favorites, the Mega Charizards. There's Mega Charizard X and there's Mega Charizard Y. Mega Charizard X is a Fire and Dragon type Pokemon that is ran as a bulky physical attacker. With the ability Tough Claws, Mega Charizard X would hit for an absurd amount with moves such as Dragon Claw and Flare Blitz. Furthermore, you can boost the damage even more with the setup move Dragon Dance. Mega Charizard X also learned Roost for HP recovery, and it also had Will-O-Wisp, which was such a good move up against physical attackers. By far the better of the 2 Mega Evolutions was Mega Charizard Y. Mega Charizard Y is pretty much just a strict upgrade in regular Charizard, as its special attack stat went through the roof and it gained an elite ability in Drought. By being able to control the weather with Charizard, it started to become a centerpiece to most teams, rather than just a side Pokemon that helped out in certain situations. Mega Charizard Y was able to do big time damage with moves such as Heat Wave, Overheat, Air Slash, and Solar Beam. Since Mega Charizard Y could set the sun on its own, it can use Solar Beam in 1 turn, countering water and rock type Pokemon, which it was weak to. Just like Mega Charizard X, Mega Charizard Y had access to Roost. It also had access to Tailwind to grant speed control for the rest of the team. Even though none of the Charizard forms have ever won a Pokemon World Championship, these Charizards have always been relevant and dominating the meta game. As beloved as Charizard is, I'm fairly confident that the Pokemon Company will always make sure it's strong and being used a lot, which is why I put this Pokemon on top as the best competitive Pokemon from Kanto. There you have it, my rankings for best competitive Pokemon from Generation 1. I'm sure a few of you guys disagree with some of the rankings, so let me hear it in the comment section down below. I already know some people are going to be asking where's Alakazam, and I'm all for it. I love that Pokemon. Maybe someday the Pokemon Company will buff it to make it viable.